Hello everyone, it's Darkseeker here bringing you another Hearthstone video, and this time we are looking at Aggro Zoo. Now, why Aggro Zoo? Well, over the last few months on the ladder I've been playing Secrets Paladin, and I've had a lot of fun with it. It's been an interesting deck to play. It's done very well on the ladder, but I've got a bit bored of it, and I've tried different iterations of Secrets Paladin, right? You know, I've tried the more aggressive versions, I've tried the mid-range versions, I've tried the Zombie Chow version, and each season I've change it up and try a different version of it, and you can see those videos on my channel over the last few months. But let's face it, Secrets Paladin, it's very overpowered, right? So Secret Keeper turn 1 into a couple of secrets, Mysterious Challenger into Dr. Boom, into Tyrion, in that order. It's very overpowered, and yeah, I got a little bored with it. The deck almost plays itself, and there are arguments being made by people that suggest, well, how much skill is actually needed? So this season I thought, well, let's try something different, and I tried this Aggro Zoolock deck, which has got me to rank 7, without a tremendous amount of effort or time investment, so I'm always grateful, because I am a casual player, so time is an issue for me. So this deck's done very well for me. What's good about this deck? Well, it's Zoolock, first of all, so it's got the early curve. You place those minions onto the board, and you get favourable trades, and then you focus on building your board and being aggressive in the late game. So what makes the deck aggressive? Leroy Jenkins. That's a classic card that's been around since the start of Hearthstone. And it sees play in this deck because you can combo Leroy with Power Overwhelming, with Abusive Sergeant, with Direwolf Alpha, and it's a finisher. It's a charge finisher. We'll look at Leroy a bit later on in this video. You've got cards like Enhancer Meccano, now has become one of my most favourite cards in Hearthstone. Why? Because it's unpredictable and can give you lethal. Enhancer Meccano on a Sea Giant with Wind Fury then is insane. So this is a very fun deck to play, and what we're going to do is a quick deck analysis. We're going to look at some of the combos and some of the features of this deck, what makes it so good, and hopefully by the end of it, if you've never played this deck before, maybe I can convince you to play it. We'll look at some highlights to close off, again showcasing why this deck is very effective on the ladder. So starting off, let's look at the early game. This is what you want to mulligan for, really. The Flame Imp, the Peddler, the Haunted Creeper, Nerubian, Voidwalker. You want a 1-drop into a 2-drop. Now, my deck only plays 1 copy of Flame Imp. Most traditional Zoolock decks, they play 2 copies. I only play 1. Why? Well, Flame Imp does 3 damage to your own face. That's pretty significant, right? In the late game, getting 2 Flame Imps in a row does that 6 damage to your face. Well, that could either kill you or bring you closer to death. So, because of that battle cry, I'm not a massive fan of that card. But if you get it on turn 1, it's really, really good. Okay, it's one of the best cards in the game, bar none, because of its value on turn 1. Dark Peddler can draw you a 1-cost card, which is really useful. You know, if you play that on turn 3, you can also play the 1-cost card. We'll look at Dark Peddler in a little bit more detail in a bit, but it is one of the best cards in the Warlock's arsenal because of what it can draw you. The utility that it can draw you can be pretty amazing. Haunted Creeper, pretty solid. Doesn't look like much, right? 2-cost, 1-2, not great, but it's the Death Rattle that makes this card so significant. The Death Rattle gives you 2 Spectral Spiders, which you can see there. The Spectral Spiders are 1/1s. It's a sticky minion, okay? It's difficult to deal with. Voidwalker is a nice taunt. It's a 1/3 taunt. Good for turn 1. Good for putting down on turn 1 with your Flame Imp. Okay, so the Voidwalker can protect your Flame Imp, letting you do some face damage perhaps, or getting some nice trades. I don't know. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Nerubian Egg. Doesn't look like much, 0-2, but the Death Rattle gives you a Nerubian, a 4-4. So that card can be incredibly threatening and is often very good insurance against AoE. Quite often it can delay your opponent from playing AoE, so it can delay a Holy Nova, it can delay a Hellfire from a Warlock, because they don't want to proc that egg. They don't want that 4/4 Nerubian to come out. So that's your early game, that's what you're going for. But moving on, there are some other cards that are pretty interesting in the early to mid game. Knife Juggler. Now, quite often that's something you'll consider keeping in your hand because it's a 2-drop. And when you play minions, you get some juggles. Hey, that's pretty good. But Knife Juggler really shines when you combo him with cards like Implosion. So you cast Implosion, some imps get summoned on the board, and you get juggles for those imps. Imp Gang Boss, once again, when it takes damage, a minion is spawned, you get a juggle. Pretty good, right? Imp Gang Boss, one of the most high-value cards you can play in Warlock, just because at 4 health in the early game it's difficult to kill in one go, so quite often you're going to get maybe sort of 2 imps out of it if you're lucky. Moving on though, we've got utility cards, so cards like Direwolf Alpha, Abusive Sergeant, these combo with your other minions. So for example, Nerubian Egg next to a Direwolf, the egg can now attack, which is pretty significant, so you can spawn that Nerubian. Voidwalker, which we talked about earlier, has 3 health, 1 attack. That 1 attack isn't very threatening, but when it's placed next to the Direwolf, that 1 attack becomes 2 attack. It can now start killing things on the board, potentially. So that's pretty good. Haunted Creeper next to a Direwolf. The Creeper has 2 attack, but more importantly, the Spectral Spiders that spawn will then potentially get 2 attack if they are next to the Direwolf. And the imps from Implosion, they could get 2 attack. So the idea here is board positioning is key, okay? Really, really important. You've got to think about that in advance and plan ahead, really. Plan ahead. Abusive Sergeant, also really good utility. Your Nerubian Egg now gets 2 attack because of the abusive buff. For that 1 turn, of course. But probably it can kill something, and that 4/4 Nerubian then spawns. So Direwolf Alpha, Abusive Sergeant, fantastic utility cards. Dark Peddler deserves its own little bit of discussion. We touched on this card earlier, but the 1-cost card that it can draw you is so very, very good. Mortal Coil, just its card draw, and it can kill something. You know, how much more do we need? That's just incredible, right? The value on that is tremendous. Peddler can also draw you cards like Flame Imp, Voidwalker, you know, which are good in their own right, but there's other interesting cards here. Now, there's 3 others here that I just want to quickly mention. Blood Imp. I wasn't convinced by this card, but then I saw one of my friends playing Zoolock, and he's a fan of Blood Imp, and depending obviously on the class that you're playing against, you know, you've got to be careful. Cards that really advocate the use of AoE, well, your Blood Imp's useless then, right? It just dies straight away. But in certain situations, Blood Imp can be really, really good at buffing up the health of other minions, making them more resilient on the board. So, yeah, maybe that's something I'll explore more when I play this deck. You know, should I be picking Blood Imp more often? Power Overwhelming is so, so good, right? This deck does play 2 copies of PO, but if you can draw it from a Peddler, well, that means you got access to 3 copies in your deck. Such an amazing card, comboing with Nerubian Egg to give you the Nerubian, giving you lethal, potentially, or giving you favourable trades. And the Reliquary Seeker. Now, this is an interesting card. Quite often with this deck, I find myself having quite a big board towards the mid-game. And Reliquary Seeker, essentially, if you've got 6 minions on board, she becomes a 5/5, which is really good. I don't often pick her though, because you know, how do you know that board is going to stick? And you know, you pick her, and then you want to play her the following turn, and then your board gets wiped. So you've got to be absolutely sure that you're going to have a board, okay, that is going to stick, so that she can be played and she can get her value. Otherwise, she's just a 1/1 and it's not particularly great, yeah. So, Dark Peddler, fantastic card, fantastic card. Right, it gets better. Brann Bronzebeard. Now, Brann Bronzebeard, he came out of League of Explorers, and he's such a good card in this deck. Such a good card. Why? Well, he essentially doubles the battle cry. So, Brann Bronzebeard, Defender of Argus, +1/+1 becomes +2/+2. With Lotheb, you double Lotheb's battle cry, so their spells cost even more, locking them out completely on that turn from playing spells. So good. Brann and Abusive Sergeant, your minion now gets +4 attack rather than +2. Brann and Dark Peddler, draw 2 cards rather than 1. Brann and Gormok, double your 4 damage. That's really good. Brann and Dr. Boom. That gives you 4, yes, count them, 4 Boombots on board. That is absolutely insane. The value on that is incredible. So Brann, if you can pull him off with a card at the right time, he's with a Battlecry card at the right time, he's really, really good. Okay, tremendous to play. Now, my favourite card in Aggro Zoo is Enhancer Meccano. Why? So incredibly unpredictable. Wind Fury, Taunt, Divine Shield given to your other minions, and quite often that is enough to end a game. Okay, Wind Fury on a Sea Giant is disgusting. That is 16 damage to their face. Taunt on the Sea Giant is disgusting. Wind Fury, Taunt, Divine Shield on most of your minions can make it very difficult for your opponent to deal with your board. It can force trades. It can force AoE, but then your board doesn't die because they had Divine Shield. So, such a good card. And hey, it gets even better. Brann Bronzebeard with Enhancer Meccano. The minions on your board get 2 of those effects, so they could get Wind Fury and Taunt, or Wind Fury and Divine Shield, or Divine Shield and Taunt. Such an amazing combo. If you can pull that off with this deck, you pretty much won the game. And yeah, so Sea Giant and Owl, really, really good in this deck. Just to finish us off here, Sea Giant costs 1 less for each minion on the battlefield. When you put that down, they need an answer to it. If they don't have an answer, it's game over. This deck only runs 1 copy of Sea Giant because 2 is a little bit too heavy, and if you're stuck with 2 copies of Sea Giant in your hand, it can be a little bit too much. It just slows you down. And Owl, well, the Owl's brilliant, right? You can silence a Taunt, go face, gives you lethal. There are so many uses for the Owl, so many ways. So many reasons why it is so amazing. Oh yeah, sorry, just to finish us off here, the reason why this deck wins games in the late game is Leroy Jenkins, charge to the face with Power Overwhelming. If Dark Peddler draws you a Power Overwhelming, if both Peddlers draw you a Power Overwhelming, then you've got 4 copies of that card in your deck. Usually, just 1 of those on Leroy tends to be enough to finish the game. 2 of those on Leroy, well, what is that? That's 14 damage. Well, they aren't waking up after that. It's over. It's lights out. And Doomguard, that card is not playing in this deck. Why not? Well, Doomguard, I like it. I really do. But the discard, okay, of 2 random cards from your hand, I think is just too much. If your hand is empty, great, Doomguard is incredible value. A 5-cost 5/7 that can charge. Well, it doesn't get better than that. But if you do have cards in your hand and you're forced to play it to clear something, losing 2 cards can feel really bad. Therefore, in this deck, Leroy Jenkins replaces the Doomguard, because when you play Leroy, you're not discarding cards. Sure, you're giving your opponent 2 whelps, but Leroy is a finisher. Therefore, you don't care if you're giving your opponent whelps. So, classic way of finishing the game would be Leroy's in hand, and you've got 2 POs in hand. You play Leroy, cast both POs, go face and win. If you had a Doomguard in your hand and 2 POs and nothing on board, well, you play the Doomguard, you discard both your POs, so that could be you missing out on lethal. Therefore, I do prefer Leroy over the Doomguard, and that's the reason why he's in this deck. Okay, so we're going to be looking at a few highlights, and in these highlights, you're going to see the power of Leroy Jenkins. You're going to see the power of Power Overwhelming, and it'll just showcase why this deck is so effective in the current meta. Starting out with our first little highlight here, we're going up against a warrior, and you can see 3 Power Overwhelmings in that hand. So we got Gormok value in this particular game. We had some enhanced so value. The warrior is at 14. So basically, you look at the board and you count it up. There's 11 damage on the board. He's got to know that it's over, right? Dr. Boom, and of course the armor up. However, there are 3 Power Overwhelmings in that hand, so Dark Peddler really helped us out in this game. It gave us at least one of those POs, and that's 16 to the face, and that's it, beating a warrior with 3 Power Overwhelmings. In this next game now, we're showcasing our win against another Zoolock. So Leroy, with a direwolf and a PO, that's 11 damage, and that's enough. So in this particular clip, Leroy Jenkins with another damage activating card such as PO and the direwolf alpha getting us the win. Okay, another warrior here. And you can see Reliquary Seeker, which came out of Dark Peddler, actually got some value in this game. It became a 5/5. Enhancer Meccano taunted up my board and gave my board Divine Shield, which is pretty good. Brawl, however, is the answer, and it's one of those cards which is very, very difficult for you to play against, given Zoo's nature is very much to flood the board. However, in this particular situation, we were still able to retain a board. So Nerubian, a Peddler, 2 Spectral Spiders, and then we put down Dr. Boom. So the only thing that wrecks us now is a second copy of Brawl, if he's got it. If he's got it. However, you can see in our hand, Leroy Jenkins, Power Overwhelming, waiting to be cast. Death Spite. Okay, so warrior doing warrior things here, and that is just going to work on the board with weapons. Well, I think we counted up. He's at 17. I have Leroy, I have Power Overwhelming, and yeah, I've got 6 on board. It's not enough, though. It's not enough. So, in this particular situation, I think we just consider maintaining a presence on the board. So, here, Argus, Defender of Argus is pretty good. So, I believe we were, 1 off lethal in that particular situation, which is a shame. So, we'll just keep the damage output going. Making this choice for him very, very difficult here. You know, what does he attack? And the Death Rattle, of course, from the Death Spite will activate the other bomb. So, in theory, he could just die right now to attacks from the bombs. He's taking 2 from that bomb. If they both did 4 damage each, he'd theoretically be dead. But anyway, that never happens, right? Oh, 3 damage from that bomb. And Baron Geddon is going to end up essentially killing this warrior for us by putting him down to 3. Oh, the bomb didn't go face. That's a shame. Oh well. There he is, Leroy Jenkins, and double Power Overwhelming, just for good measure. Okay. Another clip against a Warlock, which, well, concede on turn 8. Didn't even get a chance. Didn't even get a chance to play my Brann and Gormok combo. Clip against a Paladin here. Look at what's on the board. So, Enhancer Meccano has given Wind Fury to our 2/4 and our Egg. A lot of careful thought needed here in terms of how you go about doing this. So, by putting the extra attack on the Imp Gang boss, we get 2 nice trades there. We spawn 2 imps. We get to clear his Keeper of Alderman. And we're going to tap. I was pondering Dr. Boom. I should have tapped first, so that was a slight misplay. And the trouble here is, of course, well, it's a bit of a dead hand at the moment. We don't get full value from Dr. Boom because there's not enough room on the board. Leroy Jenkins is a finisher. And Abusive is a utility card. It's an activator for damage. So this is an aggressive Paladin. You can see with him playing the Nerubian Egg there. And the Divine Shield and the Taunt there is going to slow us down. And of course his weapon is going to go to work on my board, so that's going to slow us down even more. Wow, Seal of Champions. So not only is he going to get his 4/4 Nerubian, that egg, which now has attack power, is going to end up eating some of our board up. So we need to pop the shield here, right? We need to pop the shield. And I actually want to get the Nerubian out. I know it's a waste of the Wind Fury effect now, because we're not going to utilise it fully. But I really want to get the egg out. So I'm pondering the 1/1s going in, but no, getting the 4/4 out now is really important. He gets his own Nerubian, though, which is not very good. But we have Dr. Boom on board. And his health total, well, he's at 17. We have Leroy in hand. If we can just get a power overwhelming combo, we're in a good spot. So you've seen so far in this video, you've seen concedes, you've seen Leroy PO combos, you've seen Enhancer Meccano, wrecking havoc.
This is no place for mortals.
This is a very strong deck. Lethal comes out of nowhere. He plays Degenie and he gets some buffs. Okay, sure. I'm wondering though if that's too slow for him. He's probably going to kill Dr. Boom. It's not bad. So it's taken a Nerubian plus another card to kill Boom. I guess that's an okay trade. He's ignoring the bombs. And now you just got to count it up. That's 8 on board, plus Leroy's 14, plus Argus is 1 extra damage. And that's lethal. So time's up, let's do this. Leroy plus Argus combo there really worked out and gave us the win. Tremendous. Right, we're going to have a look now at a full game here. A full game
versus Gul'dan
against a Warlock.
Your soul shall be mine.
And I believe this particular game pushes me into rank 10 when it's all said and done. I did manage to get rank 7 with this deck, as I say, quite easily, without a huge amount of time investment. But yeah, just showcasing a full game here against a Warlock. You've seen a few highlights. You've seen what the cards can do. You've seen what Leroy can do with Argus, with PO. Seen what Enhancer Meccano can do. But let's just look at a full game here. We played the Flame Imp. It got killed. So we just play on curve. Dark Peddler here, pretty good. Gives us the Abusive Sergeant. Abusive, possible activator with the egg. He taps. Makes me wonder what kind of Warlock this is now. We saw Dark Bomb, and we've seen a tap. Is this some kind of hand lock? Is it some kind of demon lock? Reno lock? I'm thinking this is not Zoolock, though, based on what I've seen so far. So as a Zoolock, it's really important to read your opponent, to read their playstyle, because that's going to determine what cards you play, what cards you hold back for particular situations or circumstances. So I've put the egg on board, and what that's doing is saying, if you want to AoE, if you want to Hellfire my board, be my guest. There's a Twilight Drake, and it makes me wonder now, is this hand lock? I mean, it could still be Reno lock. So I'm pondering that Twilight Drake. It's got 7 health.
Who knows what secrets will
And unfortunately, that juggle was decent, I suppose, because Brann allows me to now do 6 damage, kill it cleanly. So I took a bit of a gamble there. I needed that juggle to hit at least once into the Twilight Drake so I could get the clean trade. But now I get Gormok value. He's forced to Hellfire. He was absolutely forced to Hellfire there, and unfortunately he had an answer to Brann. But we're left with a Nerubian. He's at 18, I have a Nerubian on board. So I'm starting to think this is handlock. And when you think handlock, you think giants. So we draw a card. PO is pretty good there, may give us lethal. Imp Gang Boss, sticky minion. We have 3 minions on board. He has 0, he's tapping. Oh, Twilight Guardian! Oh, so there are dragons in this deck. Wow, Dragon Warlock. Interesting. Dragon Warlock / Handlock. So how do we get through that? I mean, PO could help us. I mean, do we even need PO here? Could we just Implosion it? If Implosion hits for 4, we can trade in the 2/2. But how often does Implosion hit for 4? Interesting. If we did Implosion, it would build up a bit of board presence, right? We've already seen a Hellfire. However, this is better. This is a sort of an off-curve play, but it's better. Because we can now trade in the 2/2. So Gormok there, getting his value in. And, yeah. He's down to 6. Belcher is interesting. Peddler's also interesting. Okay, so this is not handlock. This has to be Reno lock. With dragons, right? Looking at the various combinations of cards that we've seen, I don't think we've seen him play doubles of any card yet. So this is why I think it's possibly Reno. But anyway, it's over, right? We just get through the taunt. We have PO, we have board presence, and there you go. That's the power of this Zoolock, win streaking into 10, but it did take me up to rank 7. So try it out on the ladder, have fun with it, everyone. It's, as I say, a very effective deck. If you can get your curve out with a 1-drop into a 2-drop, and if you plan ahead on the board to see what your opponent's playstyle is, hold back the cards that you need to hold back, play the cards that you need to play at the right time, get yourself Leroy Jenkins, get yourself Power Overwhelming, get yourself Lethal, and win some games. Right, thanks very much for joining me, and do check out my YouTube channel. There are some other videos on there for Constructed, as well as various arena highlights. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you all again very soon.